This wedding was supposed to be perfect, but one unexpected guest changed everything. What happened next will leave you speechless. Watch the video until the end to find out. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The evening was warm and peaceful, the restaurant hall glowing softly under the light of elegant chandeliers. Fresh flowers adorned every table, their delicate fragrance mingling with the faint scent of polished wood and candle wax. The guests, dressed in their finest clothes, chatted animatedly, their laughter and low voices blending with the gentle strains of live music. Everything felt perfect, almost too perfect, like a fragile dream that could shatter at the slightest touch. Irina and Victor, the newlyweds, stood at the center of it all, radiant with happiness. Irina's white dress shimmered as she moved, the soft fabric catching the light, while Victor, in a classic black tuxedo, couldn't seem to take his eyes off her. Their friends and family surrounded them, offering smiles, hugs, and toasts for a lifetime of happiness. Every detail had been carefully planned, from the towering wedding cake to the elegant decorations draping the walls, and it all came together to create a scene straight out of a fairy tale. The atmosphere was alive with anticipation. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, serving drinks and appetizers, while the band played a soft jazz melody in the background. Glasses clinked, soft laughter echoed, and every face glowed with the uncomplicated joy of the occasion. It was a night meant to be remembered for its beauty and perfection. As Irina and Victor made their way through the room, greeting guests and accepting congratulations, they seemed to radiate an almost contagious joy. Cameras flashed, capturing moments that would be treasured forever. Parents beamed with pride, children ran around giggling, and old friends reunited over glasses of champagne. The air was thick with love, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. Everything unfolded exactly as it should. The evening progressed smoothly, each moment flowing naturally into the next. Speeches were given, each one heartfelt and touching, causing both laughter and tears among the guests. The first dance approached, and excitement buzzed in the room as everyone waited to witness the couple's perfect moment under the soft glow of the lights. The musicians prepared to switch to a slow, romantic song, and the dance floor was cleared. Irina and Victor took their places, hands clasped, eyes locked on each other, oblivious to the world around them. It was their night, their story, and nothing could disturb the pure, shining happiness that enveloped them. At least, that's what everyone thought. The evening, smooth and flawless, continued toward its peak. Conversations grew livelier, and glasses were raised higher. The band transitioned into a livelier tune, and laughter rang out louder. Every detail was in place, and the dream spun itself more tightly around the room, a cocoon of celebration and joy. But in the midst of all this beauty, something unexpected was about to happen, something that no one could have anticipated, and that would change the course of the evening and the memories of it forever. The doors of the restaurant, heavy and carved with intricate patterns, stood closed against the soft night air. Behind them, unnoticed for now, change was waiting, quiet and patient. It would not be long before it entered. The heavy restaurant doors creaked open quietly, and a slight breeze stirred the delicate petals of the flower arrangements. At first, no one noticed. The music continued to play, glasses clinked, and laughter floated through the air. But then a figure stepped through the entrance, and slowly conversation began to falter. A man, clearly out of place, entered the room. His clothes were worn and stained, hanging loosely from his thin frame. His long, unkempt hair and tangled beard framed a face that bore the marks of a hard life. In one hand, he carried a large, battered plastic bag, its sides bulging awkwardly. His shoes were scuffed and cracked, making soft sounds against the polished floor. He paused just inside the doorway, swaying slightly, his eyes scanning the room. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. Some guests exchanged uncertain glances, their smiles fading into looks of confusion and discomfort. A low murmur spread through the room, as if a gust of cold air had suddenly swept across the celebration. The band faltered, their instruments falling silent one by one. A violinist lowered her bow, and the pianist's hands froze above the keys. All attention shifted to the man who seemed so out of place among the glittering gowns and tailored suits. Without hesitation, the man began moving toward the stage where the microphone stood, his steps slow but determined. Guests leaned back in their chairs, giving him space, watching with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Someone whispered something, and a small nervous laugh broke out before quickly dying away. The man reached the small platform and looked around. His eyes, dark and tired, met those of the guests who stared at him in stunned silence. For a moment, it seemed as though he might say something, offer some explanation for his presence. Instead, he simply reached out and took the microphone from its stand. The act was so unexpected, so out of place that no one reacted at first. Even the staff, who had begun to move toward him, hesitated, unsure of what to do. The hall, moments ago filled with the sounds of joy and celebration, now held only tense, expectant silence. The man adjusted the microphone slightly, his fingers rough and trembling. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He simply closed his eyes for a brief second, took a deep breath, and prepared to do something that would shift the entire evening in a direction no one could have foreseen. The guests watched, their initial discomfort slowly giving way to a deeper, unspoken understanding that something important was about to happen. The world outside the restaurant seemed to fade away, and for the first time that evening, everyone was truly, fully present. The air grew heavier, thick with anticipation. Irina and Victor, still standing near the center of the room, exchanged a glance. Victor squeezed Irina's hand gently, as if to say it would be all right, even though he wasn't sure himself. And then, without a word, the man began to sing. The first note that left the man's mouth was low and trembling, but within seconds it grew into something rich and powerful that filled the entire room. His voice was unlike anything the guests had ever heard before, deep and soulful, carrying a raw emotion that seemed to cut through the heavy atmosphere like a blade. It wasn't a performance, it was a pouring out of a lifetime's worth of pain, hope, and longing. Every eye in the hall was fixed on him, every conversation forgotten, every breath held. The song was simple, a melody without the grand flourishes of a practiced musician, but it resonated with a purity that no amount of training could replicate. He sang of love lost and found, of dreams abandoned and reclaimed, of the small fleeting moments that made life worth living. His voice rose and fell, sometimes trembling on the edge of breaking, sometimes soaring with a power that seemed too great for his frail body to contain. Slowly, something shifted among the guests. Their initial discomfort melted away, replaced by something deeper and more profound. They forgot about his ragged clothes, his unkempt hair, the plastic bag clutched in his hand. All that mattered was the sound of his voice, the truth in it, the way it reached into the hidden places of their hearts. Tears welled up in the eyes of many guests. Some held hands tightly under the tables, others pressed napkins to their faces, trying to hide the emotions they could no longer control. Even the staff, who had been ready to escort the man out, stood still, their hands slack at their sides, their faces reflecting the same stunned awe. Irina and Victor stood motionless at the center of it all. Irina's hand trembled in Victor's grasp, and tears rolled freely down her cheeks. Victor's throat tightened painfully, but he didn't look away. They both felt as if the song had been meant for them and them alone, a gift from some unknown place that touched the very core of their beings. The man sang of the fleeting nature of happiness, urging those who found love to cherish it fiercely, to never let it slip away unnoticed. His voice cracked slightly on certain words, but it only made the performance more real, more human. Every guest in the room felt exposed, as if the song had peeled away the layers they wore to reveal their most vulnerable selves. The chandeliers above seemed to dim slightly, the walls of the hall falling away until it felt like there was nothing in the world but the man and his song. Time lost its meaning. No one knew how long he sang. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. As he reached the final notes, his voice softened, fading like a whisper carried away by the wind. The last line hung in the air, delicate and trembling, a blessing and a plea all at once. Then there was silence. The man lowered the microphone slowly, his head bowed, his shoulders rising and falling with each heavy breath. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sounds were the soft sniffling of guests trying to collect themselves, the faint clink of a glass being set down somewhere far away. He looked up, his gaze settling on Irina and Victor. His expression was gentle, almost tender, as if he too had been changed by what had just happened. Without waiting for applause, without asking for acknowledgement, he spoke quietly into the microphone, his voice rough but steady. "This is for you. May your love last forever." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of something sacred. He set the microphone back on its stand with a care that suggested reverence, then turned and stepped down from the stage. As he made his way toward the door, the guests remained frozen, unsure of what to do, unwilling to break the spell that lingered over the room. The man's figure grew smaller as he moved farther away, and then he slipped through the open doors and was gone. For a heartbeat longer, silence reigned. Then, as if released from an enchantment, the room exploded with applause. People stood, clapping with a fervor that shook the very walls of the restaurant. Some cried openly, others hugged the person closest to them, overwhelmed by the experience they had just shared. But even as they celebrated, none of them tried to chase after the man. Deep down, they understood that he had given them a gift that could not be repaid. He hadn't come for thanks or recognition. He had come to remind them of something pure and essential, something many of them had forgotten. Irina and Victor held each other tightly, the emotions too vast for words. Their wedding day, already the most important day of their lives, had been transformed into something even greater, something eternal. And it had happened because of a stranger who had wandered in from the night, carrying a voice that could reach straight into the soul. The applause continued to thunder through the restaurant long after the man had disappeared into the night. Guests clapped until their hands hurt, some wiping away tears, others standing silently with expressions of awe still etched on their faces. But soon, as the energy slowly ebbed from the room, a quiet understanding settled among them. It didn't matter who the man was or where he had come from. His presence had become a part of this day, stitched into the fabric of their memories forever. Irina and Victor remained at the center of the room, still holding each other as if anchoring themselves to the moment. They felt different now, as if the song had uncovered a deeper layer of meaning beneath their joy. Their love, already strong, had been tested and fortified by the raw sincerity of the stranger's gift. They exchanged a glance, one filled with gratitude and quiet determination, knowing they would carry this feeling with them into their future together. Around them, conversations resumed slowly, but they were softer now, filled with wonder rather than excitement. Guests spoke in hushed tones about what they had just witnessed, their earlier worries and judgments forgotten. The evening took on a different rhythm, quieter, more reflective. Glasses were raised again, but the toasts were gentler, more heartfelt. People lingered over their words, savoring each sentiment as if they understood for the first time how precious and fragile happiness could be. The band resumed playing, but their music was different now, too. The notes were softer, more tentative, as if even the musicians were reluctant to disturb the lingering magic in the air. Some couples drifted onto the dance floor, moving slowly, their heads close together, sharing private, unspoken moments. Others remained seated, lost in their own thoughts. The staff, who had initially prepared to intervene, now moved carefully through the room, their faces thoughtful. They had been witnesses too, touched in ways they couldn't easily explain. Even the manager, who had earlier frowned at the disruption, now simply watched the celebration with a quiet, contemplative expression. Outside the windows, the night stretched dark and endless, a soft breeze stirring the trees. Somewhere out there, the man had vanished into the shadows, taking nothing with him but leaving behind something far greater than any physical gift. Irina and Victor eventually made their way to the dance floor, their movements slow and deliberate. As they danced, it wasn't the grandeur of the evening that filled their hearts, but the memory of a simple, powerful voice that had reminded them of what truly mattered. They knew that this moment, this feeling, was the real treasure of their wedding day. As the night wore on, the celebration continued, but it had transformed into something deeper, something more enduring. The guests would leave with more than just memories of fine food and beautiful decorations. They would leave with a story, a reminder of a night when a stranger's song turned a perfect evening into something unforgettable. For Irina and Victor, the day would always be more than a wedding. It would be a testament to the power of authenticity, to the beauty of the unexpected, to the way true emotion could transcend appearances and touch the soul. And long after the last guest had left, long after the lights were dimmed and the flowers had wilted, the memory of that voice would remain with them, a quiet, enduring echo of the night when everything changed forever. What an incredible story. Sometimes the most important things come when you least expect them. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires us to create even more powerful stories.